Kathleen Mansfield Murray was a prominent modernist writer who was born and brought up in New Zealand. She wrote short stories and poetry under the pen name Catherine Mansfield. Catherine Mansfield is remembered for her short stories and poems. Considered a modernist, she published several short story collections that included popular titles like A Dill Pickle and Mr. and Mrs. Dull, The Fly and the Garden Party. Some literary experts considered her one of the best short story writers of all time. She was born on 14 October 1888, Wellington, New Zealand. Died 9 January 1923 in France. The short stories Garden Party or Anya Kanya, The Garden Party, Miss Brill and more. Siblings Lizzie Heron Beauchamp, Charlotte Beauchamp, Jenny Beauchamp Moore. Catherine Mansfield was a prominent modernist writer who was born and brought up in New Zealand. She wrote short stories and poetry under the pen name Catherine Mansfield. When she was 19, she left colonial New Zealand and settled in England, where she became a friend of D.H. Lawrence, Virginia Woolf, Lady Ottoline Morrell, and others. In the orbit of the Bloomsbury group, Mansfield was diagnosed with pulmonary tuberculosis in 1917 and she died in France aged 34. More information. Catherine Mansfield was born Kathleen Mansfield Beauchamp in Wellington, New Zealand on October 14, 1888. Innovative psychological AC and acute Mansfields. Numerous stories pioneered the genre shape in 20th century. Her fiction, poetry, journals, and letters cover an array of subjects. The difficulties and ambivalences and vulnerability of relationships, the complexities and insensitivities.
Kathleen Mansfield Beauchamp was born in Wellington, New Zealand on October 14, 1888. She was innovative, accessible, psychologically acute. Mansfield's numerous short stories pioneered American literature shape in the 20th century. Her letters covered an array of subjects: the difficulties and ambivalences of family and sensuality, the fragility and vulnerability of relationships, the complexities and insensitivities of the rising middle classes, the social consequences of war, and overwhelmingly the attempt to extract whatever beauty and vitality one can from mundane and increasingly difficult experiences.
Mansfield's writing is characterized by having a third-person narrator who can travel in and out of a character's mind. She wrote about the character's internal world and struggles and often focused on women. Such is the case in her famous short story, The Garden Party, where the protagonist Laura reflects on them like life and death and the difference in social classes. This is evident when Laura thinks about the men helping to set the party. Why could not she have workmen for her friends rather than the silly boys she danced with and who came to Sunday night supper?
Catherine win any awards? Although Catherine Mansfield did not win any literary awards, her legacy has been celebrated in various ways. For example, New Zealand high schools. Thoughts of Catherine Mansfield. Risk. Anything, care no more for the opinion of others. For these voices, do the hardest thing on earth for you. Act for yourself, face the truth. Make it a rule of life never to regret and never to look back. Regret is an appalling waste of energy. You cannot build on it, it's only good for walling in.
Hello, Here, Group 1 is presenting a brief description of the chapter The Little Girl. Let us move on to the presentation.
And here it is time for introducing you the main characters. Here, Kezia, she is like a normal little girl. She is afraid of her father. Okay, now let's talk about father. He's a strict man, but he loves and cares for her daughter, but he didn't express his love. Then the mother. She's also a little bit strict, but not like a father. She's also very caring, as all the mothers do. Then grandmother. She's an old humble lady. She's the best companion of Kezia, rather her parents.
Let's move into the summary of the chapter.
Kezia was a little girl who lived with her mother, father, and her grandmother. She was afraid of her father. On Sundays, Grandma sent her to spend time with parents, but Kezia found her father lay down on the sofa to relax and mother busy in reading.
One day, Grandma suggested her to prepare a gift for father's birthday. Kezia prepared a pin cushion with a beautiful yellow silk cloth. For that, she needed scrap to fill it. She took some papers from father's room and stored them up to stuff them in the pin cushion. It was the father's important speech for the Port Authority.
When Kezia was questioned, she admitted her act. Father beat Kezia with a ruler, and she cried bitterly. She clung to Grandma, who consoled her. Next door neighbor, Mr. MacDonald, played with his children in the evening. After watching him, Kezia concludes that all fathers are not like hers.
One day, her mother got admitted to the hospital. She was alone at home under the care of the cook. Old nightmare haunted her. A butcher with a knife in his hand, she was too much afraid of it.
Father came to her room, hugged her, carried her to his room to comfort her. She realized that he was not so bad, but he was too busy to express his love. That night, she felt her father had a big heart.
The story conveys a beautiful message that there is a very strong bond between parents and children. This bond has the strength to survive every type of challenge.
I hope that everyone has listened the story. Now let us discuss some MCQ type questions that will help you for your examinations. First, who is the author of the book The Little Girl? Catherine Mansfield, Ruskin Bond, Robert Frost or William Butler? Answer is A. Catherine Mansfield. Second, what did Kezia symbolizes her father when he yawns? A rhino, an elephant, a giant, none of these. Answer is C. A giant. Third, when Kezia saw the nightmare of the butcher, she wondered whom? Father, mother, Alice the cook, grandmother. Answer is D. Grandmother. What did Kezia decided to gift her father on his birthday? A file, a shirt, a pincushion, none of these. Answer is C. A pincushion. Fifth, whom did Kezia saw from the fence? Butler, Mr. MacDonald, Mathurin, Tyson. Answer is B. Mr. MacDonald. Sixth, why did Kezia tear the papers? To play, to clean her room, to fill the cushion, all. Answer is C. To fill the cushion. 7. What was the pin cushion made of? Red silk, white silk, black silk, yellow silk. Answer is D. Yellow silk. 8. Here, rub your feet against my legs and get them warm. Who said these words? Mr. MacDonald, Kezia's father, Kezia's grandmother, Alex the cook. Answer is B. Kezia's father. 9. What kind of father was Mr. MacDonald?
Jovial nature, harsh, very rude, none of these. Answer is A. Jovial nature. 10th. What is the name of the baby on the shoulders of Mr. McDonald? Kezia, Mao, Ricky, Misty. Answer is B. Mao. We have discussed all the MCQ type questions. Now let us take a quick glance on more about Catherine Mansfield's books. A Cup of Tea. The main theme of Catherine Mansfield's A Cup of Tea is the selfishness often displayed by rich, arrogant women of the British aristocracy. Set in the turn of the century England, rigid social classes separate the rich and the poor. At the Bay. The illusion of freedom is central to At the Bay. Linda gave up a life of traveling to marry a man she loves only sometimes.
New words and their meanings. A figure to be feared, a person to be feared. Slip down, come down quietly and unwillingly. Given it up, stop doing it. Wretched, unhappy. On the bank of suicide, about to commit suicide. Laboriously, with a lot of effort or difficulty. Scraps, small pieces of cloth or paper, etc. that are not needed. Huge and cry, angry and protest. Tag, a children's game of catching one another. Nightmare, a bad dream. Tucked up, covered up nicely in bed. Snuggled, moved into a warm, comfortable position close to another person. Wandered into, went into by chance. Fainter, feeling weak and dizzy. Shudder, difficulty in telling words continuously. Yawned, opening mouth very wide and breathing in more air than usual, often when you are tired. Damped, used for emphasis or to express anger or frustration. Dreadful, causing or involving great suffering, fear or unhappiness. Butcher, a person whose trade is cutting up and selling meat in a shop. Crept, move slowly and carefully in order to avoid being heard or noticed. Terrifying, frightening. Stuffed, to fill with something. Gravely, seriously. Snoring, sleep noisily. Shivering, shaking slightly. Shadowed, closed. Bring, position or extreme edge. Hose, flexible tube. day to one and all present here. Today, we, Group 5 members, will be presenting you the literary devices used in the story The Little Girl by Catherine Mansfield. Let's find the benefits of using literary devices. Literary devices are specific techniques that allow a writer to convey a deeper meaning that goes beyond what's on the page. Literary devices work alongside plot and characters to elevate a story and prompt reflection on life, society, and what it means to be human. So when a reader reads a portion which contains literary devices, they feel they are a part of that story or the poem. And this makes the reader interested in reading the book. Mainly we find literary devices in a poem. Anyway, let's explore the story and find the literary devices used in the story The Little Girl.
The story of the little girl begins here. Paragraph 1. To the little girl, he was a figure to be feared and avoided. Every morning before going to work, he came into her room and gave her a casual kiss, to which she responded with, "Goodbye, father," and oh, a glad sense of relief when she heard the noise of the carriage growing fainter and fainter down the long road. In the evening, when he came home, she stood near the staircase and heard his loud voice in the hall. "Bring my tea into the drawing room. Hasn't the papers come yet? Mother, go and see if my papers out there and bring me my slippers." Paragraph 1. Literary devices. Metaphor. A figure to be feared and avoided. Alliteration. A figure to be feared if sound is repeated. Repetition. Fainter and fainter.
In paragraph 2, KEZIA, mother was called to her. "If you are a good girl, you can come down and take off father's boots." Slowly the girl would slip down the stairs, more slowly still across the hall, and push open the drawing room door. By that time he had his spectacles on and looked at her over them in a way that was terrifying to the little girl. "Well, KEZIA, hurry up and pull off these boots and take them outside. Have you been a good girl today?" "I don't know, father." "You don't know? If you stutter like that, mother will have to take you to the doctor." The literary devices used in this paragraph is visual imagery. Slowly the girl would slip down the stairs, more slowly still across the hall, and push upon the drawing room door.
In paragraph 3, she never tightened with other people, had quite give it up, but only with father, because then she was trying so hard to say the words properly. "What's the matter? What are you looking so frightened about?" "Mother, I wish you taught this child not to appear on the blank of suicide. Here, KEZIA, carry my teacup back to the table carefully." He was so big, his hands and his neck, especially his mouth when he was yawned. Thinking about him alone was like thinking about a giant. Literal device used in this paragraph. Thinking about him alone was like thinking about a giant is the simile of this paragraph.
On Sunday afternoon, grandmother sent her down to the drawing room to have a nice talk with father and mother. But little girl always found mother reading and father stretched on the sofa, his handkerchief on his face, his feet on one of the best cushions sleeping soundly and snoring. She sat on the stool gravely, watched him until he woke and stretched, and asked the time, then looked at her. Don't stare so, Kezia, you look like a little brown owl. One day, when she was kept indoors with a cold, her grandmother told her that father's birthday was next week and suggested she should make him a pink cushion with a gift out of a beautiful piece of yellow silk. The literary device used in this paragraph is sleeping soundly and snoring is the oral imaginary, and you look like a little, and also, and she should is the alliteration.
Paragraph 5. Laboriously, with a double cotton, the little girl stitched 3 sides but what to fill it with? That was a question. The grandmother was out in the garden and she wandered into mother's bedroom to look for scraps. On the bed table, she discovered a great many sheets of fine paper, gathered them up, tore them into tiny pieces, and stuffed her case, then sewed up the 4th side. That night there was a hue and cry in the house. Father's great speech for the port authority had been lost. Rooms were searched. Servants questioned. Finally, mother came into Kezia's room. Kezia, I suppose you didn't see some papers on a table in our room? Oh yes, she said. I tore them up for many surprise. What? Screamed mother. Come straight down to the dining room this instant. In this paragraph, there is no literary devices.
Was pacing to and fro, hands behind his back. Well, he said sharply. Mother explained. He stopped and stared at the child. Did you do that? No, she whispered. Mother, go up to her room and fetch down the damn thing. See that the child's put to bed this instant. The literary device used in this paragraph is alliteration, drag down, visual imagery. Father was facing to and fro, hands behind his back.
Paragraph 7. Trying too much to explain, she lay in the shadowed room, watching the evening light make a sad little pattern on the floor. Then father came into the room with a ruler in his hands. I'm going to beat you for this, he said. Oh, no, no, she screamed, hiding under the bedclothes. He pulled them aside. Sit up, he ordered, and hold out your hands. You must be taught once and for all not to touch what does not belong to you. But it was for your birthday. Now came the ruler on her little pink palms. The literary devices used in this paragraph is 1. Virtual imagery. She lay in the shadowed room watching the evening light make a sad little pattern on the floor. Alliteration, pink palms.
Paragraph 8. Hours later, when grandmother had wrapped her in a shawl and roped her to the rocking chair, the child clung to her so slowly. What did God make father so? She sobbed. He is a clean handy, darling. Blow your nose, go to sleep, but you will forget all about it in the morning. I tried to explain to father, but he was too upset to listen tonight. But the child never forgot. Next time she saw him, she quickly put both hands behind her back and a red color flew into his cheek. Paragraph 8. Literary devices. Sight imagery, the red color flew into his cheek.
Paragraph 9. The McDonald's lived next door. They had 5 children. Looking through a gap in the fence, the little little girls hanging onto his coat pockets ran round and round the flower buds, shaking with laughter. Once he saw the boys turn the hose on him and he tried to catch them laughing all the time. Then it was he decided there were different sorts of fathers. Suddenly one day, mother became ill and she and grandmother went to hospital. The little girl was left alone in the house with Alice the cook. That was alright in the daytime. But while Alice was putting her to bed, she grew suddenly afraid. The literary devices used in this paragraph is: number 1, alliteration. Run round and round, the R sound is repeated. Number 2, repetition. Round and round.
Paragraph 10. What will I do if I have a nightmare? She asked. I often had nightmare and then Granny takes to me into her bed. I can't stay in the dark. It all gets whispery. You just go to sleep, child, said Alice, pulling off her socks. Don't you scream and wake your poor pa. But the same old nightmare came. The butcher with a knife and a rock, who came nearer and nearer, smiling that dreadful smile. While she could not move, could only still stand, crying out, "Grandma, Grandma!" She walked shivering to see her father beside her bed, a candle in his hand. "What's the matter?" he said. Literary devices used in this paragraph are oral images like whispering, visual image like the butcher with a knife and a rope, who came nearer and nearer, smiling that dreadful smile. While she could not move, could only stand still, crying out.
Oh, a butcher, a knife. I want Granny. She blew out the candle, bent down and caught up the child in his arms, carrying her along the passage. The big bedroom. A newspaper was on the bed. He put away the paper and carefully tucked up the child. He lay down beside her, half asleep, still with the butcher's smile all about her in season. She read closely, snuggled her head under his arm, held tightly to his shadow. Then the dark did not matter. She lay still. "Here, rub your feet a little, my legs, and get them warm," said father. The literary device used in this paragraph. Rest cloth is the alliteration.
Paragraph 12. Try down. She slept before the little girl. A funny feeling came over her. Poor father, not so big after all, and with no more to look after him. She was harder than grandmother, but it was a nice hardness, and every day she had to work and was too tried to be a Mr. MacDonald. She had torn up with his beautiful writing. She stirred suddenly and sighed. "What's the matter?" asked her father. "Another dream?" "Oh," said the little girl. "My heart is on your heart. I can hear it going. What a big heart you have got, father dear." In this paragraph, the literary devices is alteration, a funny feeling, and she stirred suddenly.
Character sketch: The Little Girl by Group 6. Character of Kezia. Kezia, the young female heroine of The Little Girl, is a sensitive and sympathetic young girl. Her father's disciplinarian attitude has an equal impact on her as his affection. Kezia is naive but rash. She makes a pin cushion for her father's birthday, but inadvertently picks up his important papers to stuff the pin cushion. She considers her father to be the family boss, who must be properly served at all moments. As a result, she is relieved every morning when he departs for work. Kezia is a well-behaved young girl.
Despite a fear of her father and desire to avoid him, she removes his shoes when mother requests it. However, she is so terrified of her father that she begins to stammer in front of him. Sometimes, she is saddened to see that her father does not lavishly pamper her as other children's fathers do. KEZIA'S strong bond with father is highlighted when she notices his affection on the night she is terrified by a bad dream. When her father keeps her safe by keeping her to his bed and comforting her due to her bad dream, she is overjoyed. Her skepticism about him transforms into admiration for his efforts. She falls in love with him after admiring his big heart. She transforms from a resentful, terrified adolescent to a tender-hearted, compassionate, and a fond daughter. Character of KEZIA'S father. KEZIA'S father displays two divergent characteristics in the story. Initially, he appears as domineering, head of the family, and demands complete obedience from other members. This negative aspect of his personality is highlighted even more when he punishes KEZIA with a ruler. It appears that he fails to understand the innocent emotions of his daughter who damages papers accidentally. However, the positive aspect of his personality surfaces when he takes care of his little girl in the absence of the woman of the household. He not only carries her in his arms to his room, but also tucks her comfortably in his bed. He asks her to rub her feet with his legs to make them warm. This reveals his paternal affection, protective nature, and caring attitude. KEZIA'S father thus makes a typical father who possesses a stern exterior would actually hide a soft affection and a tender big heart full of love. Character of KEZIA'S mother. KEZIA'S mother was a kind-hearted person who cared about her daughter's studies. She was a caring individual who would take care of the entire household. However, because she was constantly laboring to help her husband and care for the children, she ignored her health and was frequently unwell. She always made herself attend to her husband's needs after he returned from the office. Although she knew that her daughter was afraid of the father, she always made KEZIA to put the father's shoes when he got back. This made KEZIA consider her to be a strict mother like her father. On Sunday afternoon, her mother took a break from her regular routine and chores. She used to stretch out on the sofa and catch up with some reading. Character of KEZIA'S grandmother. She is a frail, elderly woman. When her son punished KEZIA, she took care of her. She often encouraged KEZIA to talk to her father about giving him a surprise gift because she wanted them to have a nice father-daughter connection. When KEZIA'S father beats her with a ruler, grandmother wraps her in a shawl and rocked her in a chair, clinging to her soft body. She is a mature woman who recognizes that child rearing is a delicate issue, and the parents should be allowed to discipline their children in their own unique way. When grandmother goes to the hospital with her daughter-in-law, she demonstrates her supportive nature. As a result, despite remaining mostly in the background, the grandmother plays an important role.